Good? All right, for the video watchers out there who are warm and safe at home as opposed to the pioneers here who are braving the cold to be here tonight.
Do you know, Professor, my CPA told me, don't go. You will in danger. I said, no, we had to go. It's some, one client, when one guy is coming to something, help us out like this. Oh, you don't need it. Oh, you don't need it. No, still I have to go.
All right, hopefully you guys think it was a wise decision you were here today.
Yeah.
Tim, 3 decades of experience, is a wealth of information. If you guys think of things over the next few days, or you're reading chapter 6 for Saturday, and you think there's an issue I haven't resolved, I have no problem sending him an email with whatever questions you have, or talking to him on the phone and trying to get an answer. So if you do come across something, it's something I think pivotal for your practices, because I told you, the odds of you hopefully ever having your license censored or suspended, hopefully are very small. But the odds of you down the road, unfortunately, potentially getting sued are pretty significant. Not because you're bad practitioners, just because people,
The client is the devil?
the client is the devil, or you are human, you could make a mistake, and things can happen. But that doesn't mean, as Tim was saying, when they sue you for $3 million of damages, that you should just say, where do I cut you a check? Because often there's a lot of puffery. Everyone check their car insurance? Everyone find out what their coverage is? If you,
You know mine, you told me to increase it.
I told you to increase it. Everyone else? Ryan, you found out yours?
Yeah, I think it's 500,000.
Right. Nick, you got yours?
No idea.
You really gotta check.
I don't pay it, so.
Why not? Is it a company car?
No, my parents don't pay it.
Alright, that's
So-
never a bad thing, but you should
No,
check
yeah.
with your parents. But when they cut you loose,
Yeah.
get some real coverage. And Brian, I'm risk averse, I still say 500,000. It's not a bad number, you're ahead of that curve, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to get more in. Amari?
500,000.
Alright, well, that seems to be the number, but do you know what your deductible is, guys?
I think it's, I want to say 2,000.
Alright, that's not, okay, Brian, you know.
I'm not sure.
Alright, just check, because sometimes you pay a lot for a small deductible. So raise the deductible, get more coverage, type thing. Anyway, and on Saturday, if you come, you heard Tim, and this is not something he rehearsed for class. I heard, he's told me first, then he told you guys about his losing all color in his face, about his perspective client, when I say perspective, his client getting a tax liability of $250,000 where he thought he might be responsible, and he had that moment of where heart palpitation, and he almost passed out. I remember an instance where, you know how with clients, with documents, you have multiple versions, and I created 20 versions of a document, and I try to be very careful, and the client wanted something removed from one of the versions, and it was critical, like, I never want to see that, but I don't even remember the clause, but that clause cannot be in there, and I said, oh, no problem, I got it removed and whatnot, and 5 versions later, he said, okay, I'm ready to send it. And I sent it. And I'm telling you, I don't know, your brain can play tricks. I'm like, did I send the version that he didn't want the clause? I felt so sick to my stomach because I didn't know if I could look back, because I knew if it was the wrong one, they would have to find me on the floor, because it was just, but I just had worked myself up. Unfortunately, I hadn't. I'm here today talking to you, and that's evidence that I hadn't. But you come on Saturday, for better or worse, maybe this is why it happened in life, I have my own malpractice case to tell you about, and I can tell you I survived and I'm here, but how that played out. So it's a good story, or at least I think it is. It's always easier to say years later, but so please try to make it your business to come on Saturday. I'll share that story if you can. Again, Rita, you're supposed to get a number. And secondly, in case if all of you should have got it prodded, I think, on student evaluations, yes?
Yes, already done.
All right, so thank you. If you guys had 2 minutes, was that yes or no, Ming? You got it prodded?
Yes.
Because I don't know.
You don't receive it?
No, it's in group.
No,
I
it's,
think.
it would have come from SIRS.
Yeah,
SIRS.
it is there.
If
Student
you're registered for the class, it should come. So those people watching on video, you should be getting solicited if you have 2 minutes. How long, Kevin? Take you a minute to fill out?
Less than that, like
All
a
right,
minute.
so take a minute or whatever it takes. And if you have any suggestions, please, feel free to. All right, let's continue. We said that Florida is very aggressive. They don't want outside practitioners. And we talked about the rules. Let's get into the problems because they're elucidating. And I want to make sure we get through. Page 271, we have 5-7, excuse me. We have lawyer in a firm, long-standing relationship with a client, manufacturer of nationwide operations. Lawyer regularly advises clients on federal tax matters from lawyer's office in Chicago, near client's headquarters. Lawyer is a member of the Illinois Bar, okay? In connection with planning for a new plan, client has asked lawyer for advice on property tax laws, tax exemption, and tax holidays in several states, California, Texas, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. In rendering such advice, will client be engaged in unauthorized practice of law in any of these states? And then it elaborates, does it matter whether the lawyer travels to those states, meets with client's employees, state official or municipal officials on client's behalf? Does it matter whether lawyer's advice is orally or writing? Should it matter? And
Well, you get less than split, I mean.
I'm just looking for the rules which you guys have, and I promptly put away 5-5-.
5-5.
So. So what's your instincts here? Can the lawyer do this? Is this a problem? Any instinctual answer? Paying. Is it Omari?
I said it's a problem.
It's a problem. So and then Ping, agree, disagree?
Also, some depend on what topic you are consult with, client. For example, property tax maybe is local side. It's not related to the federal side.
Right.
So in that case, probably is you have to consult with a local lawyer.
But there's
So
no
it's not-
litigation.
So Omari and then Mike. Omari, elaborate.
I'm looking at the facts that the tax holidays in California, Texas, and Michigan, and I think that's local versus federal.
Definitely
So
local.
Yeah.
And Mike, you're gonna say?
I don't know, there's no litigation. There's only
So there's no litigation, so that's promising. If there's litigation in those states, obviously, lawyer license in Illinois should not be in state court in California. Everyone agree? That's easy, okay? So if there's a litigation matter, the Illinois lawyer should not be litigating in California unless the Illinois lawyer obtains something pro hockey vici, special permission to bring a case. But this is not. This is, do you think this happens often? Probably, but here, and Peter, you mentioned something before. What might help in this case, the attorney? Do you remember what you said?
I think,
Get counsel from that
yeah, I
state.
would say have them find other local
Fine,
attorneys.
but Kevin nailed what you said.
Get counsel from that state.
Well, true, but Peter made a point before. Who's the client here? Where's the client from?
In
Illinois. It's not, so remember, California has an interest, we know from the Bierbauer, however you pronounce it, Bierbauer case, to protect citizens of California, right? Does California have much of an interest, does Texas have much of an, Michigan, protecting Illinois clients? No, right? So this is a much more favorable fact pattern, right? If the client were from California and there was an Illinois law firm, then we're back to Bierbauer, right? So just be careful for exam purposes and client purposes. If you're working with an attorney, are they working, where's the attorney located? That's gonna be a critical fact. And just like Mike said, is this litigation or non-litigation? If it's non-litigation, that too is a favorable fact. And then if you look at 5.5C4, which I distributed, 5.5C4, look at C. It says a lawyer admitted in another U.S. jurisdiction and not disbarred or suspended from practice in any jurisdiction may provide legal services on a temporary basis in this jurisdiction that, four, now let's go down to 4, not within 2 or 3 that arise out of and are reasonably related to lawyer's practice in a jurisdiction in which the lawyer is admitted to practice. And the question is, look, this lawyer knows presumably this client's business inside and out, right, in Illinois, and might, by extension, know what, would they qualify, for example, for tax holidays in these different states depending on the criteria. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities that they could still render good advice because this is reasonably related to an existing relationship. Kevin's point is well taken too. Look, as well as, I'm just talking about best practices. So let me stand back. Ethics issues are never black and white, right? That I don't think that any of these states would probably challenge this law firm from doing this work. I still think, and you just heard Tim talk about what can you do to protect yourself. And admittedly, you may not make, like if you do all the legal work or do all the accounting work, right, for a client, you make more fees, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you have local counsel do some of the work, you make less, right? Because the client doesn't want to pay twice, agreed? But that's an insurance policy of sorts, right?
Covers your butt.
Well, and it's well worth it. So sometimes, if you don't mind me saying, the accounting work that you do in other states, you might, depending on its complexity, consider getting a local accountant to guide you on some of the esoteric accounting / tax issues because, right, you're not gonna make the same fee, right? But you're gonna sleep better at night, I'm telling you. And if there's a problem or issue, just imagine that you're talking about, you had a client in Minnesota. Well, going up in Minnesota where there's an Arctic vortex is not my idea of fun. It wouldn't be my idea of fun even if there weren't an Arctic vortex, okay? Malpractice suits are painful to begin with. Even when I was had to go to the law firm in Livingston, 20 minutes away, to answer interrogatories, it's like, I dread this, okay? So imagine you had to hop on a plane and start dealing with attorneys in other places and so as painful as malpractice suits are, times it by 5 or 10 if you gotta start doing it in jurisdictions that are far away. But if you had local counsel in those places, I'm not saying that's it, game over, you'll never be sued there, but you're reducing the chances, okay? So, just like you get good car insurance, right, Omari? You might want to, think of your practice that way, right? Five -8. Attorney,
It's missing. There are 3 questions.
there are 3 questions. I kind of conflated the 3 questions.
Does
I
it
mean,
have
I think the lawyer, by traveling to the states, the more the attorney immerses him or herself, and the longer the attorney immerses him or herself. Like if the attorney is there on a very temporary basis, if you look at Model Rule 5.5, temporary presence there, not gonna be a problem. But if they're there for 6 months or a year, rendering advice, all of a sudden it looks like they're truly practicing in that state, and that could be wholly problematic. The fact it's oral or written, verbal or written, I don't think that matters. You bill time for it, you're on the hook. Look, I'm not gonna take issue with Tim, he's the expert, I don't, you know, he practices that area, I don't, I mean, good days I know something about tax. I will say that memos to files, it's okay, I much prefer billable records myself, just because, memos to files obviously are self-serving, right? Client can say, look, I know, or the attorney who's prosecuting you could say, hey, that was a self-serving memo, that was that person's recollection. Of course they construed it in a way that was wholly favorable to them. Still, it's not a bad thing to have. When you have a bill record, and the client's paying your bill, presumably, and it's reflective of the conversation and whatever misgivings, and the client didn't challenge you then and there, I think that puts the defense attorney in a much better position than a memo to the file, all right? So that's my 2 cents on that. Viva, we're okay? Okay, if you're okay, I'm okay. We have attorney as a state planner who's licensed and practices law in California. As attorney is approached by a financial planner in California to review and prepare an estate plan for a client who lives in Oregon. The client occasionally, perhaps once a month, travels to California on business. Attorney is not licensed in Oregon. The client is a high profile in Oregon, and some estate planning issues are quite sensitive, meaning this client, he or she has a boyfriend, girlfriend, illegitimate child. You pick your parade of horribles of what this client, what the word highly sensitive means, okay? You can use your imagination, guys, whatever that means. Consequently, the client doesn't want to use Oregon counsel. Well, is the attorney engaged in unauthorized practice of law in Oregon? If so, would it matter if the attorney never sends documents to Oregon by mail, fax, or email? Do you see any other potential problems? Consider the result that the attorney hires competent counsel in Oregon. Must the client know that Oregon counsel has been hired? Doesn't matter the identity of the client is not disclosed to Oregon counsel. So what would you do in these circumstances? Peter?
This one's a little different because, I mean, if the issue's in Oregon and he lives in Oregon, it could be an issue if he takes on the client because he would have to deal in Oregon. So it could be a conflict, I think.
Conflict, I'm hearing the word conflict.
Well, meaning that you.
Is it the unauthorized practice of law?
UPL.
So you're troubled by it. Anyone have a different answer? So everyone's troubled. So I'm troubled too, okay? So what do? Do you say to the client, fire the client? What do you do?
I would definitely entertain the client and then seek.
Just talk loudly because with
I would
that.
entertain the client and seek local help in Oregon to try and bring it together. Like you say, you lose a little, but you gain the client.
All right, everyone understand? I'm on Peter's page. I mean, client comes to you and has a reason. It's not like there's no reason. If they just said, look, I think your law firm is great, and I love California, the notion of a California law firm, I think the client might be better served just having Oregon counsel, all right, truly. Here, but the client has a legitimate reason why they don't want Oregon counsel, so that gives you legitimacy for legal representation. And if you look at comment 20, the cross-reference there, you're supposed to make sure that you inform the client in writing that you're not licensed to practice in Oregon. And you should inform the client that you will secure Oregon counsel. Now, can you secure Oregon counsel and not disclose the client's name? The answer is yes, you can do that. To protect the client's anonymity, I can never pronounce that word. As in anonymous, but anonymity. I think that's the pronunciation. Oh, you guys want a good word? I'm always curious. I was in Somerville, someone had said we should eat at this. Does anyone know what this word means? Elysium.
What does it say?
I didn't, so Elysium.
There's a restaurant with a similar name in where I live, but
You didn't know either.
no.
Now you will know. So, has anyone been to an Elysium before? And
Maybe.
he's looking it up.
It's a Jodie Foster movie as well.
Yes,
Yes.
it's a movie.
Aside from, and why was it called Elysium?
The Elysian Fields. It comes from the Elysian Fields, which is a conception of the afterlife that developed over time and was maintained by some Greek religious and philosophical sects and cults.
It's where the heroes go when they die to meet with the gods. It's supposed to be a place of pure perfection. It's an Elysium,
So it's heaven.
a heaven,
Whatever. Yeah, like a Greek heaven.
Greek
Right.
heaven. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, you want the Roman version of this? I'm going to mispronounce it. Valhalla, Valhalla.
Valhalla. Isn't it Valhalla?
Probably.
V-A-L
How do you spell
H-A-L V-A-L-H-A-L-L-A.
VL. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's VL.
Yes, Valhalla. V-A-L.
VAL.
Yes, H-A-L-L-A.
HALLA.
Yeah, Valhalla.
That's the Roman version, I believe. And let me just tell you, ignorance runs deep in me. For years, or when my wife and I were considering moving to Montville, anyone know Montville, New Jersey?
Yes.
Montville.
Yeah.
And you know what's in Montville, New Jersey?
No, I just play a lot of soccer there.
There's Lake Valhalla.
Ah.
This one like
Valhalla.
the place of peace, we are telling that way.
The place of peace.
Yeah, place of the peace.
Okay.
And in Hindi, means in language Hindi, it's called like Swarg.
All right, well, you're getting different versions. So
Yeah.
anyway, guys, Elysium, two new words that you might want to pick up. Elysium and Valhalla, places of utter joy. So I'd like you to think of this class as an Elysium of sorts, okay? Try hard.
If we don't now, we will in the future when we get in trouble.
No, when you don't get in trouble, you say,
Yeah.
that was an Elysium. It saved me. It gave me a peaceful existence. All right, so when you don't get in trouble, consider your life spent in an Elysium. All right, so guys, I think if you do it right, and you get Oregon counsel, and again, you're working with these people. You guys are the accountants working with the attorneys. They need your guidance. They do stupid things. It's up to you to either inform your client or inform the attorney, hey, this is the way it should be done. Don't be cavalier. You should not be practicing law in Oregon or with my client. My client needs, many times accountants come to me and they say, oh, can you do this? And good accountants will tell me what they think should be done and we can have a meaningful exchange. And you guys can play that role. Okay, 5-9. You know, isn't it funny with words, guys, that once you learn them, like, you see them and you're like, how did I go through X number of years of my life and I never knew that word? Or you didn't know its meaning? I mean, how many words can you say that about? Schadenfreude, right? Everyone added that one to their list. 5-9. Attorney has represented both owners and owners of interrelated but separate business entities for years. 2 of the entities operate in Georgia and 3 in Alabama. So just in my margins, I have 2 G's representing 2 entities in Georgia, 3 in Alabama. So I have AAA representing 3 entities. One of the owners resides in Georgia and the other resides in Alabama. Attorney is licensed only in Georgia. Company Y has made an offer to acquire all 5 entities. Company Y is located in Massachusetts, as its counsel. As part of the transaction, attorney is asked to provide a legal opinion addressing the tax treatment of the transaction under both Georgia, the law under both Georgia and Alabama law. It is not necessary for the attorney to travel outside of Georgia to complete the opinion. In which state is the attorney practicing? Is this the unauthorized practice of law? So we're going to have the facts here. We have an attorney who's only licensed in Georgia, represents 2 owners of business. One represents in Georgia, the owners are, but he's represented both owners, not the businesses themselves. Is he practicing let's take off the table. Is the attorney practicing in Massachusetts?
No.
Okay, that's the easy one. Okay? So at least let's limit our exposure. The attorney is not practicing in Massachusetts. How about in Alabama and in Georgia?
Georgia, yes. Alabama, no.
And why do you say he's not practicing in Alabama?
You don't have a license?
He doesn't have a license, but that doesn't mean he's not practicing. So, right, I mean, just keep in mind, at Burbauer, they weren't licensed in California, but they considered practicing, but it was the unauthorized practice. So, with this,
He was representing the 2 clients, the one in Georgia and the one in Alabama.
okay,
And
so
Could,
could this be the unauthorized practice of law in Alabama?
well, if we go by simple definition, then yes.
There's no simple definition, right? And remember, if I didn't respond, just keep in mind the fact that in the prior problem, 5-8, whether or not you do things by mail, email, text, whatever, however you do it, that's not definitive. Physical presence is not necessary, okay? Just courts 20 years ago, right, in Burbauer said that's not a sine qua non. So you can practice without physically being in a place. But in this particular case, it does look like the attorney is not only practicing Viva in Georgia, but also in Alabama, because he's representing the client, right, the co-owner in Alabama, and runs the possible risk, right, of unauthorized practice of law. So I don't mean to make your notes ambiguous or equivocal, but this could be a problem. 5-10. Attorney is transactional lawyer in Illinois. For years, attorney has represented Company X, which conducts business throughout the country, but has its principal place of business in California. Attorney is hired by Company X to assist it in acquiring a business that has operations only in California. We have attorney is transactional lawyer in Illinois. For years, attorney has represented Company X, which conducts business throughout the country, but the principal place is California. Attorney is hired by Company X to assist it in acquiring a business that has operations only in California. Completing this transaction is expected to take some time and will require attorney to spend considerable time in California. Okay, keep that in mind, considerable time. Will attorney be engaged in the unauthorized practice of law in California? Would it result be different if attorney firm had an office in California but no California attorneys worked in the matter? Company X had its principal place of business in Illinois. Let's go one by one, because I know, Viva, you'll get upset if I gloss over all these and don't answer this question right now. Yes?
What is transitional lawyer? What
That
is
means they engage in like mergers, acquisitions, I think of it as a transactional attorney. Was it transitional or transactional?
Transaction.
Oh, no, transactional.
Transitional.
Should be a it's a transactional lawyer. It just means they
Corporate lawyer.
buy, sell assets, stock, shares. they're not doing trust and estates work, they're not doing intellectual property, they're dealing with companies buying and selling and things like that. Okay, so let's do this. If they're licensed in Illinois, they're representing a company X who does business throughout, its principal place of business is California. Query whether or not a lawyer licensed in Illinois should really be representing the company that has its primary business in California to begin with. So could that be the unauthorized practice of law in California, guys? What do you think?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And comment 20 talks about, or comment 6, excuse me, says you could do it on a temporary basis, but the authors slant the facts here and says it's gonna be considerable time, right?
Mhm.
So that's not good, right? That's not good. Would the result be different if attorney's firm had an office in California, but no California attorneys worked on the matter?
No, same thing.
No,
Yeah, it's problematic.
Yeah.
You know, the fact you just have an office, but you're not utilizing the expertise. Or you have a virtual office with an address, but that's not gonna do anything. If the company had a principal place of business in Illinois, Peter, this is your time to shine, because why? If the
And in Illinois?
Yeah.
No, because he's licensed in Illinois.
it's licensed, and now, is this an Illinois client, right?
Mhm.
California is less concerned about protecting, let Illinois, if Illinois has a problem, let Illinois step in. So here, there's gonna be less of a problem. The company X had a principal place of business in Tennessee. Well, you know, query, if the principal place is in Tennessee, what is our friend doing, who's licensed in Illinois, help, servicing a client whose principal place of business is in Tennessee, trying to acquire a California company? It looks like, hey, this may not be good for the client, it may not be good for the attorney. I think there's a greater risk that we are engaging in the unauthorized practice of law. In any of these situations, what difference would it make if the attorney was a member of the Illinois bar, but was recently hired to work as an employee of Company X in its California office, focusing initially on this project? And I'm not quite sure if the authors were what they were trying to get at, Michael and Linda, because if they're hired as an employee at the company, I mean, as a company employee,
Yeah, company
they're not
employee.
really practicing, like, if you're hired by a company as their accountant, all of a sudden, you're not practicing as a CPA, a public accountant, you're in-house. So I think that moots the entire issue of unauthorized practice, right? Fane, you were gonna say something?
If he was, have an office, employee at this company, firm in-house, which is, he may work at, counselor, or a general counsel
Right.
office, so which is, he can practice law based on that.
Well, when you say, if you're working in-house, you are practicing, but I don't think you have the same concerns because you're an employee of the company. So
Yes,
chances are, I think you're, how do I say it? I don't think you're practicing on a state-by-state basis. In other words, my opinion is always, if you're in-house, if there's special issues that come up pertaining to state law, you're gonna retain outside counsel. Like, all of a sudden, you're inside, and what do you do in those circumstances? You retain outside
You don't
counsel.
represent yourself.
Right. V, were you gonna say something?
no.
Okay. I think we gotta get you to bed, V, and get hot tea and try to,
I remembered how I knew the word Valhalla.
How did you know the word?
I went to a bar in New York City with that name.
See?
And
And you never knew.
yeah, and I was trying to, like, how do I know that word? And yeah.
Okay, see, I think I told you guys, many years ago, I went on a volunteer project in Haiti. And in Haiti, they are, one of the, in Port-au-Prince, one of the things that they're known for gingerbread houses, right, that were created in the 1920s and 30s. And I was like, all the tour books talked about the gingerbread house. And I really wanted to see one. I'm like, I can't see one. And one of the guides said, we had to stop at this hotel to pick up drinks, and then we'll go from there to this museum. Go to the hotel, we're sitting outside at this terrace, and I said, you know, this is great seeing the city, but I really want to see a gingerbread house. He said, look around you. And I was in the biggest gingerbread house in the entire country, but you just don't know it until someone points out the obvious to you. So now you know. 5-11. Client maintains a home in New York and has been using attorney licensed in New York for many years in both personal and business matters. Client A now spends much of the time in Florida and has established residency there. Okay, so we have the typical snowbird, right? Lived in New York or lived in New Jersey, says, you know what? Enough of the polar vortex, I'm going to Florida, right? Off they go to Florida, and the attorney's not licensed in Florida. Client A asks the attorney to prepare a codicil to his will. Attorney prepares the codicil, which he mails to Client A in Florida for execution. Client A executes the codicil in triplicate, keeping 2 copies in Florida and sending one back to the attorney, who keeps it in her firm vault. As attorney engaged in unauthorized practice of law in Florida. Now, why do you say so?
Because he really didn't do any litigation, and he had been the client, and the codicil was only a minor change to a will that was already established.
Right? And it would have a difference. Because let me just share with you, this one I can share on a really personal basis, is that probably under Model Rule 5.5 C4, where you say, hey, this is like reasonably related to your prior practice, because, right, the codicil is just an extension of the will. So it's sort of, you can draw a connection. It's not like 5.5 C4. It's not like you're getting a call from a Florida attorney out of the blue who says, you have a great reputation, Solid. I really want to use you. I know you're only licensed in New Jersey and New York, but you know, gotta have you, right? There's no prior relationship, so it would be hard to justify. Here, you could justify. But, having said that, and I think you're right, you wouldn't be questioned, but from a practitioner's point of view, you gotta be nuts to do this, because again, I don't know Florida law, and these kind of things are very unique to Florida, and if there's a problem, I don't wanna be sued in Florida, guys. I don't wanna be sued anywhere. But I certainly don't want to, you know, all of a sudden have to start dealing with taking planes to Florida. So my response is probably not the unauthorized practice of law, but best practices, run for the hills, say thank you, you should get local counsel to do this. Because I know what, by the way, in Florida, what do you do for estate planning? Everyone in Florida, when I say everyone, anyone who has ever seen an attorney will get something called a revocable trust to avoid probate in Florida, because probate's a big problem. New York and New Jersey, probate's not. So by you having your client, if they went to a Florida attorney, the attorney would have said, you know what, forget a codicil, you need to redo your documents. That's probably the right advice. So I would not get involved. Question B says, suppose that in the course of representing A, attorney is introduced to client B, client's neighbor in Florida, who wants a similar estate plan of A. Client B has never used attorney, has no contacts with New York. Advise attorney on whether she can provide similar estate planning service to client B, and if she does, what risks she face, even if she never spends time in Florida. Her answer would be different if she took the documents to Florida for execution. So I think you guys know the answer to this. should this be done?
No.
No.
No. Here, you can't justify it because this, I think, would really constitute. And by the way, Florida does have an interest, right, Peter? This is a Florida citizen, and you are practicing Florida law for a Florida citizen.
What if the advice, what if you give the advice and you say, you know what, you should get a Florida attorney to do this, right? The New York attorney. But then the Florida attorney does not do a new one, just does the codicil. Then would you still be liable later?
No, I think Tim Saya, who you just heard, would say that that person had a responsibility and the proximate cause was done. That negated proximate cause. Your actions were not responsible for the damages. The Floridian's attorney's actions were the proximate cause for the damage. And we're gonna go through that on Saturday. And I apologize, in a perfect world, we would have had, I can't ask Tim to come in on Saturday. In other words, we would have finished tonight chapter 5 and he would have come in on Saturday when you had already read chapter 6, but that's okay. I think when you read chapter 6, hopefully some of those things said will resonate more readily with you. So your answer to B, question 511B is don't touch that kryptonite. 5-12, attorney is a tax litigator whose license and practices in the state of Virginia. Attorney is retained by Company B to handle tax litigation that could not be resolved at the IRS Office of Appeals. Company B has its principal place of business in South Carolina, but no operations or sales in Virginia. Attorney is not a member of the South Carolina Bar, but is admitted to practice before the tax court and the U.S. Court of Appeals of Federal Claims. Is the attorney engaged in unauthorized practice of law in South Carolina? Do you see any other ethical issues the attorney should consider? Now, remember, we talked before about the different courts you can go to and you guys who are in the tax procedure course will grasp this, that if a client does not, if you can't reach resolution with the Office of Appeals, you can go to the tax court, court of claims, or district court, right? We spoke about the 3 different venues. The only problem is this person is licensed to practice, right, in the state of Virginia. And sometimes district courts, and in this case, this time, it would be the District Court of South Carolina, right? Might, emphasis on the word might say, hey, you should be licensed in South Carolina, but because of Sperry, remember that's the Supreme Court case, you really shouldn't have a problem. So the Sperry talks about the supremacy clause, right? That if it deals with federal tax issues, that practitioners who practice federal tax can practice universally, right? So I think we should be okay. I really don't think there's an unauthorized practice of law in handling this matter.
Because he's only discussing the federal.
He's only discussing federal issues here. Now, advertising and solicitation. I like these cases. I handed out to you on the back side of what I distributed. There's solicitation of clients. There's a whole section here. What does it mean, solicitation or solicit under 7.3? The 7.3b says a lawyer shall not solicit professional employment by live person-to-person contact when a significant motive for the lawyer doing so is the lawyer or the law firm's pecuniary gain, unless the contact is with a lawyer. You can read the exception. Okay. So generally, person-to-person contact is prohibited. But lawyer advertising, the Supreme Court thought that was a First Amendment right. So there is a case, Bates, that permits lawyers to advertise, okay? So this is spelled out on page 273. lawyer can advertise. And then on page 274, we have this, I can't pronounce it, you guys wanna help me? I can barely pronounce Valhalla, or Alec, however you say it, versus Ohio State Bar Association. Now the facts of this case, if you had a chance to read, are some of the most incredible facts you'll read in any case, right? So, anyone, I don't know if people were as ambitious, Peter, you get this far?
Oh, yeah, the link again.
You wanna tell us what happened here?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, no.
You cut it off right before paying, you got here?
Oh, I don't remember. I read it, but I can't.
Yeah, this case is a little interesting.
Alright, so Viva read it, and not only did Viva read it, I don't know how much she listened to it, but apparently you can catch this audio of the
I will
person.
send it to you tomorrow. I downloaded it. I will send you tomorrow.
Alright, but there's a website apparently where you can hear the oral debate between the lawyer's attorney and the state of Ohio debate. So what are the facts here?
Okay, I'm sorry, the name was, I'm sorry, Montreal?
I don't know who you're referring to.
No, the person's name is Ollie, right?
The attorney's name.
Attorney's name, right? He lives in Ohio, and somehow he picked it up that there was an automobile accident of two girls who was 18 years old, and he thought, let me help to proceed this case to them.
Alright, so he learns that two girls were apparently in an accident, and he's gonna see if he can get them as clients, right?
Yes. So he went to hospital to see that client. When he meet the client and when he didn't meet, because
Ultimately, he meets both girls.
but one left already from.
You're right. One he meets in the hospital, and if you get the visual, if you read this case, I get this visual that this woman, it was a bad car accident. She's in traction, stuck in a hospital bed with no ambulatory ability, and whatever, she gets this surprise visit from this attorney who says, we have to bring this lawsuit. And he then meets with her, and he's always hiding a tape recorder. And needless to say, too, he also wants to meet with the other girl passenger. And this is really egregious, too, because she didn't really want to meet with him, and seems like reluctantly meets with him, doesn't want to bring a suit. And they actually have a conflict of interest, because by having potentially both of these people as clients, the woman who is a passenger has a potential lawsuit against the driver. So really shouldn't be representing, maybe representing one of them would be okay, representing both of them, and telling one what you should or shouldn't do is really sleazy, to say the least. So nevertheless, that doesn't seem to stop him, and when ultimately they don't hire him, the driver does get another attorney involved who does settle, and she did pay this attorney 1/3 of whatever she received. So, and then she wants to get it back, but it's really egregious what this attorney did in terms of. I know we are used to the saying ambulance chaser. This guy is a poster child beyond for ambulance chasing. Now I know many of you, I think, I probably haven't gotten speeding tickets. Anyone in this room?
Have I gotten speeding tickets?
V has got it. Did you get letters from?
Yeah, all the time.
And why is that okay or not okay?
It happened in Vermont, by the way.
Vermont.
Yeah, I still got those in Jersey.
Oh, and you still got letters in Jersey, and B, you got
No, it was a while ago. But yeah, you deal with
Alright.
it and you move on.
But the point I'm making is with the tickets that you got, why is it okay to receive letters?
Oh, well, the state or the city or whatever sold your information, right?
Well, they didn't sell it, I hope they
No,
didn't
it's
sell it.
public
public
record.
information.
They
It's
what?
public-
This should be public record.
Oh, it's public record?
Police report is
My
public
speeding
record.
ticket is public record?
Sorry, yes.
But when I Google myself, I don't see it.
Police report
I don't
is-
know if they posted, but it is a public record.
Yeah, if you get a like
Yeah,
car
you go
accident also, then you also get some letter from the other attorneys who can help you to do that one.
Right, but why, is that permissible or impermissible? Receipt getting letters.
It's permissible.
I assume it's
There's no
permissible,
contact,
that's what they
there's
do.
Right, there's no
No,
in-person
first-
contact, right? They're not
Oh.
ringing your doorbell and saying, you need to hire me. Right, you could just, as we did, or Peter did, rip up the letter or recycle the paper, right?
I did get one in North Carolina, and I did call them because I knew that I had an issue, so.
Peter, for the entertainment of the crowd, do you mind sharing, I don't wanna put you on the spot,
To
but
my
what,
defense, to my defense.
so just
I
bring
was-
it,
I
bring
was-
it, bring us there.
To my
You're
defense, I
driving-
go to Myrtle Beach every summer with the family. And I was at a point where I was going 70 because that's what it said, you know, right? Somewhere between, you know, this was North Carolina. Somewhere between closer to the border of South Carolina, I guess the speed limit was 50, and I didn't pay attention. And I didn't see that, it isn't like there were that many, you know, signs. And, you know, the rule of thumb is you can go a little bit over, you know, the speeding limit as long as you're not going way over. Well, I was going 80, 10 miles over.
Fine. Oh, you
No,
mean you
that's
were
30
going,
miles over.
no, you're 30.
Yeah, oh, in your head it was 10.
70.
70.
It was-
70.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be that bad.
Did you hire?
Anyway, I got pulled over. And the guy tells me, you know, I pulled you over. I said, yeah, I was going, 80. He goes, yeah, it's a 50 mile. I'm like, what? I go, no, it's 70. He goes, no, it's 50. So I'm not gonna argue with the state trooper, he knows. So I even showed him my gold card. I have many.
What's
Didn't-
gold
didn't
card?
work. A PBA card that's gold, like a family member. Law
Oh, those
enforcement,
things
family
that
law
you
enforcement.
get, the stickers you get
No,
for.
no, not that. I didn't have a shield. I had the actual card in my wallet. I keep it with my license. So anyway, he was very pissed. You know, I had my son in the back, obviously, in a car seat, and, you know, the family. I apologized, and then he gave me the ticket, and he goes, you have to appear in court. I'm like, huh? I'm from Jersey. No, you have to, because you
This is
went
my
over.
cousin Vinny.
Yeah. So I was stressed, and then I got a bunch of letters, from North Carolina attorneys, and then.
And that
I
means,
actually-
by the way, that doesn't mean that day, it means like weeks later you have to make a separate trip.
Yes, technically I'm supposed to go back. And I actually contacted our family attorney and I asked him, Pete, you gotta get somebody there. Still, man, you gotta get somebody over there. I can't.
You gotta have someone with a southern drawl, keep going.
So anyway, I read all the letters and I was kind of amazed to see what they would say, you know, and the one that sold me the most, this is marketing here, was the one that actually had the application, I forgot what it was called, and it said, you don't have to appear, just fill this out, sign this, and we will appear for you. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that's my, yeah, there it is, I don't have to go, because my fear was that I had to go no matter what. And none of these letters said that about one, put the fear out of me. I contacted them, I made sure they were legit, I paid $450, and they told me just take a defensive course, which I did, online, and then we'll bring it down from 4 to 2, or whatever it was, because technically you could lose your license over there for that. And that's my experience.
All right,
Oh,
there you
my
heard
husband
it.
is the
Don't
same.
talk to my wife about that.
My husband is the same.
What happens on Madison Avenue stays on Madison Avenue, okay?
My wife was mad because,
Until you upload it to
Because-
YouTube.
You don't need,
I'll be
fill
honest,
in,
my
you can
wife,
fill in the
my
blank,
wife was
my wife
mad.
is mad.
My wife was mad because on the way there, I got pulled over as well. For
Oh.
speeding,
Oh.
right? But the trooper was nice and let me go. I told him the truth, because on my way there, I was tired. I go, I'm very tired, I worked all these long hours, I've been driving for whatever. He let me go. On the way back is when I got the tickets, and my wife goes, you see how you are? So that's why she was pissed, because I didn't learn my lesson.
But didn't you get a warning and then isn't in their computer system?
You know what, I don't know how factual that is. Yeah, technically you can think that, but he didn't say to me, you know, you got pulled over 5 days ago, here's your warning, he didn't say
It was
anything.
the same police officer.
No, it
you were-
definitely wasn't.
I know.
Because the
Then you
first
would've
guy
been
was
in
really,
prison.
the first guy was really nice.
My husband got out of speeding tickets by blaming me and by starting a wife bashing discussion with the trooper. So he was like, my wife is going crazy on the phone, like, you know, she's wondering where I am and this and that. And I had no idea.
And the officer said, I can relate. and-
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I guess it was not a female officer, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys, before we get a little punchy up here. So we read about this case, we read this guy did all these horrific things. The lower court says, okay, we're gonna give him a public remand. The Supreme Court said indefinite suspension. Indefinite suspension. And by the way, when Tim Sayed talks, and you've heard me say this, where someone's gonna get their license suspended, that is, now he said the person was close to retirement. But, you know, I know you love being here on Wednesday nights and Saturday mornings, but think about all the time, effort, money, and energy you put into getting your degree and your certifications, and that's at risk of being suspended. That is rough. So just be careful, guys, out there. I've heard people do very, like with attorney trust accounts, little things, and it just takes once, boom. And there's no forgiveness, okay? So if you ever have retainer money or anything like that, never, ever go near that stuff. All right, so court acknowledges that advertising is okay. The big problem here was the in-person solicitation, because they just said it puts prospective client at such a disadvantage, because the lawyer is trained in the art of persuasion. The prospective client can't really rationally think. They're under intense pressure and undue influence, and that's why there is this prohibition. And they want to send a message to the community that this is simply impermissible. And the fact that they couldn't prove actual harm to the client on 279 was immaterial. Court rules that this attorney went way too far and upheld the Ohio court. Look, the Supreme Court is in the business, doesn't hear that many cases a year, doesn't hear these cases regularly. It's gonna sound a resounding message that this is, you keep hearing me use this word, kryptonite, just in case you guys are not Superman fans. Kryptonite is what takes away Superman's powers, so you gotta remember, don't go near kryptonite, don't go near this kind of stuff.
I want to show this. There was a lot of, remember when the market crashed and everybody was foreclosing their homes?
Yep.
There was a lot of attorneys that were illegally doing these modifications. Illegally in the sense that they're not allowed, according to New Jersey, they're not allowed to just primarily, sell that product. Modification. So a lot of attorneys were doing that and basically charging ridiculous fees, taking money out of their accounts monthly, working on a resolution, and they were not. So what I'm trying to say is, with that story is that there was so much fraud involved. Now, I don't know if you know any case law, if anything happened, if there was some major, like, in the legal community, but there was a lot of lawyers doing that. They were taking advantage.
I don't know if anyone got paid the
Did you
price.
hear of that? Have you heard of
I
that?
did, but not to the extent that there was any problem, that there was an issue. So give me 2 more minutes, let's just talk about Saturday. We will finish chapter 5, guys. It is, essentially we have one case, it's a fun case it's all about CPAs. You guys will, I think, enjoy reading it, so it's not gonna be a big deal. Hopefully you already did, but if you didn't. And then we will get directly into into advertising. And chapter 6 deals with attorney malpractice. You will see the elements, we're gonna look at a case, but then there's talks about, things that we've already mentioned. And what are, we spent quite a bit of time on damages. Some of the law review cases here, I think there's mentioned, if you look at footnote 28 on page 306, and you look at footnote 24, if you want, there's a guy, at footnote 25, his name is Jacob, goes by Jerry Todres, Todres. He's written the most about this. I was just on the phone with him last week because I'm working on this case, a tax shelter case. He's a really nice guy. He specializes in accountant malpractice damages. He teaches at Touro University, right in New York City. Really, really nice guy. So I just want to, I see him in the footnotes here. I want to give a shout out to him. So, any event, guys, I will see everyone here Saturday morning. Thank you. Be very careful. I'm not kidding you. First of all, that parking lot, or all parking lots, there's just a very thin layer of water. And when it's 3 degrees, it is very slippery. So don't go quickly, okay? I know everyone's anxious to go home. Just be very careful out there, all right? So I will see everyone on Saturday.